G'day folks, nice to see you all. Mr Heathcote here, just with a quick talk about some of the notes we were taking in class today. So we had a bit of discussion about juxtaposition and V. So I typed up our notes, and I just thought I'd go through and expand on what we were talking about. So as you can see there, juxtaposition, as it talks about, is an act or instance of placing close together or side by side, especially from comparison or contrast. And what we talked about was that McTeague does this all the way through V for Vendetta in order to demonstrate the key themes about the importance of freedom rather than control of totalitarian governments. So juxtaposition, it can be a bit of a complicated concept, but this is actually a really good example of it. So this is a famous photo from the war in Lebanon. And what we can see here is a group of a group of young people that are actually playing on an old, looks like blown out tank or something along those lines. And so we see the innocence of youth compared with the horror of war. And by looking at that, it makes us think about what impact war can have on society. So that's an example of how it happens in photography, but we actually see it in a whole range of areas. And so throughout the film, I would argue that we see V as being juxtaposed with the totalitarian government. And that we see this especially in his first scene, which is really his first speech to the people, which is a really key scene. So some of the notes we put for this is that he's all about the power of words. And he says, words offer the meaning to meaning, and for those who will listen, the enunciation of truth. And the truth is there is something terribly wrong with this country, isn't there? And so straight away we see this key idea set up of the balance between the words that the government uses, which are to control, the curfews, what people can and can't do, and V's version of use of words, which is about getting to the truth. Now it's got there, notice up until now the public are presented as passive viewers. We see them a lot sitting on couches watching their TV, which is distinct from how we see them at the end of the film. And that really, we see a key theme here that's about people overcoming their fear. He says to the people, I know why you did it, you were afraid. And it talks about, and Evie says later on, I wish I wasn't afraid all the time, but I am. And most importantly, V, while saying he understands why people did it, does blame people, because by giving their, as he says, silent, obedient consent, by inference, he suggested that people, by not acting, gave their consent, okay? They allowed people to be taken away, allowed the government to control them rather than standing up. And as he wants, and as we talked about today, he wants the public to overcome their fear and stand in support with him. As he suggests, governments should be afraid of their people, not the other way around. A couple of technique things as we're going along. Notice, I think the rousing music is played when V is speaking. It always builds to a sort of crescendo. And that especially when we're looking at juxtaposition, the scene we were looking at just now, at his house, we look at where he lives, we see the warm lighting, the soft jazz, which is really juxtaposed with the coldness of the opening scene. So all the way through, we're persuaded, despite the fact he does some pretty bad things, to be able to see things from V's point of view. And actually looking at the language, notice the way in which the government presents V's actions following his attack on the media. So where he talks about him being a psychotic terrorist, presenting a message of hate, and the daring raid the terrorist was shot and killed. Okay? So all throughout we have this play on words, how they're used, and how they can be used to either control or to liberate. And interestingly, and this is a bit of a big idea to have a think about, but notice the meta language of the film. So throughout we see V talking on the screen in order to speak to the people. McTeague is speaking to us, just like the people. We sit and we watch the film. McTeague is speaking to us. The film is a call for action. It looks at both sides of an issue, but it firmly takes a stand, which is in favour of the importance of freedom and individuality, okay? And Remember, as we say, the film utilises a dystopic narrative to offer a contemporary criticism. A criticism of fears at the time that people were handing over too much controls to governments as a result of fear about terrorism. Anyhow, look forward to speaking to you more about this and hearing your opinions one way or the other. If you've got some other good ideas, maybe you could comment and down below and put them in there and we can have a conversation about it. Otherwise, speak soon. I've put this on OneNote. All right.